We love the label self-made. It sounds like the ultimate compliment. The idea that someone defied the odds and built their success from absolute zero. But the self-made myth has a massive blind spot. It assumes that we all have the same starting line, when in reality, you either start ahead or you start behind. For one 16-year-old boy living on the outskirts of Mexico City, that line begins with a desperate decision. His family is immigrating to the US, but there isn't just enough money to bring everyone. So, he is left behind. Overnight, he is entirely alone. No safety net. No one to put food on the table. And while other teenagers are worried about high school drama, his only objective is trying not to starve. Over the next few years, and against all odds, he manages to keep himself alive, push himself through high school, and eventually become the first college graduate in his family. Now contrast that with a second young man who also lives in Mexico City, but with an entirely different life. He attends a school where he learns leadership and public speaking. And because his basic needs are met, he is encouraged to take passions, projects, and wild risks. People might look at his ambition and call him self-made. But let's be honest, it is easy to dream big when failure costs you nothing. If one of his ventures fails, he doesn't just lose his livelihood, he would just go downstairs, finish homework, and eat a warm dinner. He has the ultimate luxury, the freedom to fail. These stories might seem worlds apart. While one is fighting for survival, the other is thriving in comfort. But the only difference between them is one generation. The first boy, the one left behind at 16, is my father. And the second is standing before you. When you look at my profile today, as an author and consultant, I might seem like the classic self-made story. But I assure you, I am not. I could spend my teenage years growing because my father spent his teenage years surviving. If I'm standing on this stage today, it is not just because of my hard work. It is because my father's finish line became my starting line. And what happened here between us is not an isolated story. Sociologists call it the Matthew effect from a verse in the gospel. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. In economics, we use this to explain why the rich get richer. But today, I want us to look at it from a different perspective, as the law of accumulated advantage. Think of a forest. The tallest tree in it isn't the tallest just because it came from the toughest acorn. It is also the tallest because no other tree blocked its sunlight, and because the soil around it was deep and rich. And the rabbit didn't chew on its bark while it was still a sapling, and the lumberjack didn't cut it before it could finish growing. You see, because it had all these initial advantages, it grew stronger. Because it grew stronger, its roots went deeper. Because of that, it absorbed more water. And thus, it grew even taller. That is the Matthew effect of accumulated advantage. But here's the tricky part. These advantages, like roots, are usually invisible. When we look at a successful person, we only admire the fruit, but rarely do we look at what's underground. So let me deconstruct my own root system for you, because it wasn't magic, nor just talent. It was 3 specific layers of privilege. The first one being cultural capital. When I went to school in Mexico, I sat next to friends who had the same textbooks and teachers. Yet they struggled with English while I was fluent. Was I smarter? No. I just had a dad who played me the Beatles and spoke to me in English since I was a toddler. So while my peers were starting from 0, I started from hello, goodbye. That is an invisible head start. The second layer is social capital, vision. When I was young, I met an author of a very best-selling book who was also dean of a private high school. He saw potential in me and offered me a scholarship. Now, he didn't mentor me like I expected. He didn't hold my hand in the path. But he did something equally important. He pointed to a mountain I couldn't see, becoming an author and speaker. And while he didn't go the way with me, he turned on the lights so I could see the path. That changed my life. And because I had such an early target so early in my life, this is where the compounding privilege kicks in. Because of that, I was able to step onto stages and publish 2 books while I was still just a teenager. Was I a prodigy? Absolutely not. I just had the lucky advantage of an early start. But mindset and vision aren't enough. You need fuel, economic capital. And when I finally got into college abroad, I had the grades and even a scholarship, but my family savings were simply not enough. The math didn't work. So my father did the only thing he could do. He sold his car. I am standing on this stage today because a man braved the dangers of Mexico City's public transit. 2 buses, 1 train, 2 hours and a half each way, every single day, so I could afford to pay tuition. He couldn't change the entire world, but by handing me that money, he changed my world. This is the anatomy of the Matthew effect. Cultural capital, social vision, economic fuel. It wasn't just grit. It was a series of advantages I didn't earn and privilege I didn't create. I am not self-made. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Juan Carlos, that is a beautiful story, but I don't feel like the tallest tree. My dad didn't sell his car. I actually had debt and stress. I worked for everything I had. Is that what's on your mind? I believe you. Here's the hard truth though. We are often blind to the very ground we stand on. You see, the problem with privilege is that we don't see it. We see through it. It's like the lens that shapes our entire world. We live in neighborhoods where everyone has a car. Go to offices where everyone has a degree. So to us, those aren't advantages. That's just Tuesday. And even worse, thanks to social media, we only ever look up. We scroll through our feeds, compare ourselves to the 0.1%, and feel left behind. We see the yacht and think we're doing bad. But today, I want us to stop looking up for a moment and actually look at the data of the human race. If you have a college degree, you're not just educated. You're in the top 6.7% of the world population that has one. That means over 94% of people don't have one. If you've ever been to a plane, you belong to the top 20% of humans who have ever left the ground. For the rest 80%, the sky is a ceiling they will never break. And often, that freedom to move has nothing to do with merit. It is about the color of your passport. In our society, the very soil you're planted in dictates your entire horizon before you even take your first step. Even if you're watching this talk online, you are separated from the 2.6 billion people, 1/3 of humanity, that even in 2026 have never accessed the internet. So, if you have the cultural capital of a degree, the social capital of a passport, and the economic capital of Wi-Fi, you're not average. You are a statistical anomaly. But let me be clear, being an anomaly does not erase the effort. Acknowledging these statistics doesn't mean your sweat and hard work didn't matter, or that success is just blind luck. That's not what I'm saying. Matthew effect explains the privilege, but it does not replace the effort. Or in other words, having the sunlight doesn't matter if you just don't photosynthesize. For example, 96% of the US population has access to public libraries, yet over 50% of adults reported not reading a single book last year. So, access is the door. Effort is walking through it. So yes, be proud of your sweat, but we just can't call ourselves self-made because we didn't build the door and we didn't provide the key. We just had the courage to step through it. And once you recognize that, it changes how you see people still standing outside. You stop assuming they are lazy and you realize they might be banging on a door that is locked. Or worse, they might be facing a solid wall where you and I found an opening. So this leaves us with a heavy question. If we accept that we are the tallest trees, what do? A tree doesn't apologize for the sunlight it gets. It uses it to grow, but it also fosters its ecosystem and creates a canopy. It pays it forward. Because to quote the great philosopher, Uncle Ben, with great power comes great responsibility. So how do we actually put this into practice? Well, I believe our impact grows outward from the center, much like the rings of a tree. I call them the circles of responsibility. And it all starts with you in the center. And first of all, what is within your life? Because before you lead others, you must lead yourself. But this isn't about generic self-development. It is about stewardship. When you realize you have been given a head start, your first responsibility is not to waste it. You must put in the work to make the most out of that advantage. My dad sold the car, but I still had to get the grades. You must validate the sacrifice of others with your own discipline. And once you are full on the inside, you will naturally begin to overflow into the next ring. That is level 2, your atmosphere. And this is about what's within your reach. This is also about everyday kindness. It's the microclimate you create for the people immediately around you. We change the world one step at a time with something as simple as a kind word or picking up trash that isn't ours. Think about it. The first can thrown in the floor doesn't make a street already filthy, but it does make it feel more acceptable for the next person to drop theirs. Your attitude works the exact same way. When you walk into a room, you bring your weather. So don't be the storm, bring the sun. And this is a beautiful way to live. So beautiful, in fact, that this is exactly where most well-intentioned people stop. But everyday kindness is only maintenance. To truly change our world, we must build doors and overflow into the final circle. Your world. Not the entire world, but your world. This is about what you can do within your power, structural power. Look at the saplings growing in your shade. Step to the front and use your power to benefit them. Look at the people coming behind you. They have the grit, they have the talent, but they don't have the key. If there aren't opportunities for them, create them. If they are facing a wall, knock it down and build a door for them to walk through. Remember the dean who pointed to a door for me? That vision changed my life. But later, I met a man called Chuck Garcia who took that multiplication even further. He didn't just point to the door. He selflessly handed me the key and walked with me. That is the third circle and what it is all about. It is showing someone a possibility they didn't even know existed. It is walking back to the path you just finished, to the door you just crossed through, seeing someone banging against it on the dark and saying, here's the key. Or even better, it is looking at the solid wall that my father had to knock down and building a door right through it. Look at the saplings growing in your shade. And instead of competing with them, be their canopy and nourishment. Because that choice, whether to hoard your advantage or to share it, determines whether your privilege becomes a barrier or a blessing. Because we cannot pay back the people who sacrifice for us. We only can overflow. I can't buy my father's car back, but I can honor his sacrifice by opening the door for somebody else. So in the end, I am not self-made. I am the harvest of a man who decided that his finish line would be my starting line. And today, we have the choice to be that starting line for someone else. You don't have to change the entire world. You just have to share your sunlight, build the door, pass the key, and go change your world. Thank you very much.